He said, but you're not smart enough to go to high school and you're not smart enough to go to college. And now I'm looking, now I understand self-esteem. At that time, I'm looking at this individual who is supposed to be guiding me, this Caucasian who's guiding me, telling me I'm not smart, telling me, so I'm already feeling bad because I look like a black Jiminy Cricket. I'm already feeling bad because I'm being bullied and being hit in the head. Now I'm being told by this individual that I'm not smart enough. So then he looks at me and he says, hey, I have a friend. He works at the register. We can probably get you a job delivering papers that you can work your way up to be a district manager. Or I have another friend that works at Armstrong Tire and Rubber, and you can go to Armstrong Tire and Rubber and you can then retire from there. And men, and women too, but especially men, we have this ego thing. So I didn't want to cry in front of him, even though tears were welling up, because here I am thinking not only, do I look funny, but I'm not intelligent enough, and I want to cry. But I didn't want to cry, and I didn't want other students to see me cry. I didn't want anybody else to cry, because it was like, I was a man, I was a boy, men, we don't cry. Another lesson I learned, that you don't base your manhood on what society tells you is supposed to be. So I go home and I get in the house and my mom comes in and I'm crying now because I'm at home, I'm cool. My mom said, what's wrong? And I told her. And she looked at me and she said, I'm gonna do two things. She said, one, never let someone define you. Never let another person define you. And she said, two, I did not raise an ugly child nor a dumb child. And that made me feel good, But what I didn't know until years later is that my mother paid, now I understand she's a small woman, paid this counselor a visit. And when I learned later, I didn't know my mother could cuss like that. But she lit in that counselor, went up one side of him, down another. And she's the one who identified him as a racist, and she didn't tell me till years later. But as she started talking to me about racism and other things, it set with me. So when I got to high school, my whole thing was to what? I wanted a big house, I wanted a white picket fence, and I wanted a nice car, so I would give my mother a place to live and she wouldn't have to struggle no more. That was my bottom line. And the only thing I knew back then, now understand, the years that I'm talking about, only thing I knew about then was sports. I said, okay, if I can be a football player, if I can be a basketball player, I can make some money. I want to destroy two myths quickly. One, all black people can't dribble. I was one of them. I couldn't dribble with a lick, and I tried. The ball beat me half to death. Every time I talk, between the legs, didn't work. The other thing is, all black folk don't run fast. So football was really out of the question. And I tried both of them. And the coaches were real cool. They had me doing some other things, but the first time I got hit in football, I was done. John, I couldn't get off the ground. I laid on the ground and the guys looked at me and said, you shouldn't play football. And as soon as I did get off the ground, I agreed with them. But one thing about being bullied, you learn one thing. You can run long distances. You learn to run a long way in a short period of time. So guess what I went out for? Long distance track.
Cross country? Cross country?
Cross country. I could run my butt off. And all I would do, my motivation point, all I would think about was those bullies behind me. And I wouldn't let them catch me. But at the same time, I had begun to deal with different authors. And I began to dealing and formulating my life. Because I was going, and when I got my letter, oh my God. Because that's when I also realized that this was a physicalized world. Now I'm introduced to individuals defining, I'm introduced to racism, I'm introduced to now the physicalization of this country. Because understand, I wasn't popular coming up. But as soon as I got my letter sweater, I became very popular. I had this big old letter stuff and everything. And what I lacked back then, especially in girlfriends and that type of thing, well, girls started talking to me. You know, wanted to go out. I said, shoot, this might work. So I started dealing with that. But at this time, all this is formulated. See, a lot of times, we don't realize how our lives are formulated. We don't realize the lessons that we're learning in life. We don't realize that. We don't realize that until something happens or until your comfort zone is challenged. And with me, I was blessed because my comfort zone was challenged at every step of the way of my growth. And I didn't know why, but it was. And I was trying to process it and everything else. And in trying to process it, you know, I was trying to say, okay, what am I supposed to be doing? Because I didn't fit in any one group. Even in track, they had a clique. I wasn't in that clique. In school, I wasn't there. So a gentleman, E.C. Smith, and Dennis Claiborne came to me while we were in Tech High, at high school. They said, we got to start a black student union. And I said, a black student union? I said, why would I want to start a black student union? I said, I like everybody. And so then we started telling me about history and we're not in the history book. I knew we weren't in the history book because I took history. I didn't see nobody in the history book that looked like me. But my thing was that, you know, okay, this is life. This is the way it was supposed to be. How are we as students supposed to make a change? And that's when I learned about responsibility. And I was all right with that responsibility. And I'm cutting a lot of the story out, but I ended up being called a nigger one day and messed me up. Because this white man was calling me a nigger. I knew what my name was, but I had a problem. Now I had to make a choice. Do I whip his behind? Which I didn't know if I could, but I was willing to take that chance. Or do I walk away? I didn't realize my third choice. That was educate. How do I educate this individual? Because if I whip his behind, there's no telling what story he would take. If I walked away, what would that do to me? I never thought about educating. That anytime you're in a moment and something happened that challenged your comfort zone, how do you turn that into an educational moment? How do you make it so that you're not the fool, that you're educating individuals? And that is the third choice that I had to learn. So after that, I went back, I said, one condition. Our junior, I'll start a black student union if we start a white student union because we can't do this by ourselves. Now understand, now I'm understanding Mark Twain on the second part of his quote. What's my purpose in life? My purpose in life is to help bring folk together. How do you bring folk together? You start educating. Now understand, I'm young, putting my life together, but my commitment now is to serve people. We started the Black Student Union. Long story short, Dr. King gets killed. We came together. Black students and white students decided not to riot. What we did decide to do was walk out of school. Now understand, back then we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have Instagram, you know, nothing, so we couldn't text another school or anything and say, walk out with us. But the word went out that K.O. and E.C. Smith, and they were walking out of Tech. They were going to shut Tech down. But what we did, we got some teachers, the meters at a place called Soulful Village was in the community, and they met us there, so we finished our school day. And the next day we went to school. Long story short, E.C. Smith and I was taken in front of the school board and everything. We got kicked out of school. They kicked us out of Tech. They sent me to Lincoln. They sent him to Roosevelt. I walked into Lincoln and said with the principal. Principal looked at me. He said, "You got a second chance." I said, "Wow." He said, "But to get that second chance, we don't want no trouble out of you. Because we understand you're a troublemaker." What's happening to me again?
Being labeled?
I was being labeled. I was being defined again. And I looked at him, and I said, "I beg your pardon." I said, "I'm not a troublemaker. I'm not going to let you put that on me." And he looked at me then and he said, "See, you're smart. You're a smart aleck." And I asked him, bottom line, what class am I going to? They gave my schedule, I walked in. At Lincoln High School at that time, there was 4 black students. I was the 4th. And I was the darkest. The other 3 were lighter than light. And I met them and I said, okay. I said, I'm not gonna fit in here at all. I know it, but I'm gonna do my best. I joined the journalism club and did all that. The kids really didn't want to ride with me. And John Ware, God bless him, we got to talking and he came to me one day, he said, "Can you educate me?" He said, "I don't know nothing about black history." I said, "John, I'm learning too." So John and I started learning black history, and then his girlfriend, who was a young white girl, she started learning black history. So now I had a little cadre of individuals learning black history, and I was having a ball. Because every day you saw the change in John, and you saw the change in other students. One day when I first met John was wearing clothes black folk don't wear, and he was walking through the hall going, really. Next thing you know, John was walking with a little pimp, and I told you gotta be yourself. But he walking a little pimp, his clothes had changed. His parents were worried about him. They said there's a bad influence or something in the school. And then John and I was going, and his little girlfriend started wearing some jeans with some holes in it. She was no longer dressed. And I was having fun. I didn't think it would go any further. So I'm in economic class. All of a sudden the door swings open. John comes in and blood was running down his mouth. He said, "We're gonna have a revolution." I said, "Ooh." I said, what do you mean a revolution? He said, "We're gonna have a revolution. I'm tired of these crackers messing with me." I said, I did. I fell down in my seat. I said, "Oh my God." I did. I said, "I ain't never gonna graduate." I said, "I'm done." And so my economic teacher, he's a big dude too. He looked at me and said, "If you get out of that chair, you will never go to another school in Des Moines." And I looked at him. So now where do you think my mind went? Where do you think my mind went?
To your mom?
Huh?
To your mom?
I'm gonna get out of that chair. You ain't gonna tell me not to get out the chair. Now, been different, he said, "Okay, let's talk about this. Let's get John tight." He said, "Don't you ever think you're gonna disrupt my class." It was on and kicking then. And I got up there, I grabbed John, I said, "What happened?" He said, "I was telling them that I was black and I was proud, and the white boy hit me in my mouth." He said, "Let's go get him." I said, "John, let's think intelligently. There's 2 of us and about 1,500 of them." I said, "We're in a no-win situation." He said, "But you said revolution." I said, "No. I said be intelligent." So we got through that day, and it was really cool. And I talked to some of the white students, and I said, "Hey, we need to talk," and everything else. Long story short, it went up. All the white students, we went to a game between Tech and Lincoln, and I'm sitting on the Lincoln side because I'm mad at Tech anyway. John is there. And so the Lincoln students start calling the Tech student niggers. "Get that nigga off of me. Get that nigga." I said, "Oh, I can't sit here and they just be calling folk niggers, So I got up and I crossed the middle of the field during the play, to the court, and I went and sit on the other side. And they said, "Gator, what's going on?" I said, Nothing, it's all right." And then they started, "Let that nigga go over there. He don't belong at Lincoln anyway." And they looked at me, "They've been calling us nigga." I said, "Don't even worry about that." After the game, a big fight happened. A great big fight. And then dummy me, I went to school the next day. Cross country is one of the best sports you can ever be in. because they ran my black behind out of Lincoln High School, across the bridge on 9th Street, all the way back to Tech, so I could get it. The crazy thing is, they couldn't catch me. 'Cause I was stepping, because why? I was scared. These individuals getting whipped my behind. So I got to Tech, and as soon as I got to Tech, boy, they saw me coming up there and I was running, you know, they looked at me and said, "We got you." Next thing you know, it's Big Riot. They said I started it, it was my fault. I got kicked out of every school in the state of Iowa. First time I got involved with legislation, because they actually passed a law that anyone who causes a riot in our school system on the grounds could be charged with trespassing. My mother, my grandfather, almost a year later, went and negotiated my graduation. I graduated then from Tech. I wasn't allowed at Tech. I wasn't allowed to walk across the stage. They mailed me my diploma. I'm saying that for you, that when you talk about race, when you talk about struggle, when you talk about change, don't talk about it lightly. And if you talk about getting involved with it, get involved with it with your heart. Not what you can get out of it, not who you can impress, but talk about you and your commitment of what you want to do. And then identify what change you want to make. Once you're able to do that, then you start making those changes that you need to make without playing the game. Then you start choosing friends around you or associates around you that are thinking the same way that you're thinking. Then you're beginning to also deal with yourself and your commitment. Because right after that, my next step in graduating was joining the Black Panther Party. And I love the party. Today, I tell people, quit saying I'm a former Panther. I am a Panther. Everything I learned was from the Black Panther Party. We started a free breakfast program, a free clothing program. That breakfast program is going today, and that breakfast program is the reason why there became a breakfast program in the Des Moines School District and throughout this state. They weren't feeding young people at that time. They weren't feeding the kids. And I got to the point, every morning, Kalonji Sadiq, God rest his soul, him and I had 2 vans, and we ended up picking up almost 300 kids every single morning to take them to a breakfast. Where they got waffles, they got pancakes, they got eggs, and everything else. And then the powers to be came and said, "Hey, the Panthers are teaching kids hate. We gotta have our own." We weren't teaching hate. Nobody, we said things like "off the pig," but that wasn't hate. You know, y'all judge that. But anyway, the key is we were talking about self-defense in our own community. And there were police officers that we were friends with that we actually talked to, and that some of them would come and say, "Hey, my partner over here, he don't understand, but you'll go." Neither Kalonji and I had driver's license. We'd be driving kids, and the police would pull up, our friend would pull up beside us and say, "Kale, you know you ain't supposed to be driving. And you got all them kids in the car, what do you get in an accident?" And we told them the same lie every time. We said, "As soon as you drop them off, we won't drive no more." And then we dropped them off and go pick up other kids. But the key is that was our commitment. And in Des Moines, it was really cool because the change between the police department and the Black Panther Party changed when the social media and the federal government got in and they started developing programs like COINTELPRO to be able to make sure that the Panthers were not successful in what they do. We didn't even pick up a gun until our Panther headquarters got blown up. We didn't need guns because we were feeding babies. We didn't need guns because we were giving people free clothes. We didn't need guns because we patrolled our own community and was dealing with the drugs that were being pumped in our community. Until the day happened on Drake Relay's weekend that they blew up the Panther headquarters. It's the only headquarters that was blowing up in the Panther, in the country that deal with the party. It was here on 11th Street that somebody took C4, planted in the back of our building where our class was at. It just happened we were late for class. And there was only 6 of us in the house instead of close to 150. If we all had been in class, the conversation we're having now would not have taken place. 6 of us lived, changed our lives forever. It got serious now. How do you survive when you got people trying to kill you? How do you survive when you're doing what is good and you're not doing anything that was wrong? And you got people telling you, we're gonna take your life. You see, when you make a commitment, sometimes you'll find out that you're standing by yourself. That other people don't believe in what you're doing. My family didn't. The only one that had confidence in what I did and was doing was my mom. I was no longer allowed to come to family reunions. I was no longer to come to family events. I couldn't come to the Christmas, my grandmother's house for Christmas. They were saying he's a militant because that's the term that they labeled us. They labeled us terrorists. That's a term they labeled us. We didn't label ourselves that. We call ourselves revolutionary. Revolution is not a negative term. Revolution just means change. It doesn't mean violent change, it means change. And the thing is, what really upset me, that this country and the powers that be had the audacity to tell us revolution was bad when this country was built on revolution. I said, that's so hypocritical. So now I'm developing my philosophy. Now I'm developing my stance. I'm developing my conversation. And I'm not letting people, define my terms, define me. Now it's about what I want to be able to do. I wasn't going to let them call me what they want to call me. I was going to call myself what I wanted because I knew who I was. Today, I would tell you I'm a revolutionary. I've never given up that term. So you can manipulate diversity, the term diversity. It becomes a buzzword. So you can manipulate the word inclusion. That has now become a buzzword. Because see, when you talk about diversity, a company can hire one black person and say, we're diverse. They can hire one Latino and say, I'm diverse. A college can hire individuals and not pay the female staff the same that they pay the male staff and talk about they're diverse because they have so many women now on campus. See, we have to understand when we're being hoodwinked and bamboozled. And see, when you look at yourself from a revolutionary point of view, then you're looking at yourself with change. You're looking at yourself and putting life together. You're looking at yourself of saying, I can accept you, everyone in this room for who you are. Be you, do you. And if I'm true to my revolutionary self, none of you I would discriminate against. None of you. And I'm not going to let a system teach me to hate you because they say I'm not supposed to like Caucasians or have you hate me because you're not supposed to let somebody who's black. Or you hate somebody else because they're supposed to, be immigrants. And they're taking the jobs and everything else because you define who you are. So if I waste time being mad at you because you're white, then that means both of us are wasting time. You calling me a nigga, me calling you a cracker, us hollering at each other. We're wasting time. Why? The 1% in this country and the powers to be are dictating what a woman does with her body, dictating how much money people need to make, dictating policies, because why? We're fighting each other. And then when it boils down, we don't even know why. We don't even know why. Then we're getting in caught up, then the hoodwick and bamboozle later because they increased technology. Now we're into technology. Now we don't even talk to one another. If I get mad at you and me and you dating, which we're not clear, but you know, if we were and everything, I don't have to come to your house and break up with you. We're broke up. All I gotta do is text you and then take you off my text. I won't even get there because we quit talking to one another. We quit having those real conversations. When I get mad at somebody, if I get mad at Cortez, you know, all I gotta do is get on Facebook. Cortez ain't shit. That's all I gotta do. And believe me, I use some terms, I don't get real bad, but I also don't bring it on the French. Because I don't think shit is a French word, is it? No. Okay. So, but all I gotta do is get on Facebook and talk about Cortez, and he ain't this, and he did this, and everything else. And then I can do what? I can block him. See, we don't communicate anymore. A lot of us don't even FaceTime. We stay away from each other because it helps us live in our comfort zone. It helps us to be who we're afraid to be. And then we can be somebody else. That's why Meta will be a success, because you can create who you want to be. You don't have to be you no more. You don't have to understand your charge in this society to make a difference. That's your charge. How you decide to do that is on you. But you have to understand, make that choice. You may just want to become a doctor and help people. That don't mean you're in the street hollering revolution. That means you're becoming a doctor to help people. You may want to become a professor at a college. That means that's what you do. That's your way to make change. But you learn to make systemic changes, not cosmetic change. Because when you put on cosmetic, what happens? What do you do with cosmetic at night? You take it off. You don't have to have it. But when you do systemic change, that system changes. That's changes that you make a difference in people's lives. And you only can do that when you're true to you. You're honest with yourself. Because if I had to listen to that counselor back in the day, and I didn't listen to my mother, who wasn't my friend, but she was my parent. And my mother was real clear she would never be my friend. She said, I'm your parent. You'll have friends. I'm your parent. And then when you say, Mom, I want you to be my friend, she said, you want me to slap you? See, she wasn't my friend. But she led me in a direction. She wasn't in my fan club. She wasn't an associate. She wasn't a friend. She was my parent. But she taught me how to draw a clear line of demarcation between my fan club. And a lot of us have fan clubs. And you know who they are. That when you get ready to do something wrong, you get ready to, go crazy, go drinking, you smoke some dope, hit it a little bit, when you get ready to do all that, they're right there with you and saying, yeah, we're doing this here, but get caught. Then the fan club is saying, you shouldn't have did that. See, you gotta put people around you that also are looking for what's best for you. But if you don't look at what's best for you, why would you expect somebody else to do that? See, it's just like love. I learned through all this process that a person, like happiness, a person can't make me happy. They can enhance my happiness, but they can't make me happy. And I say to you, if you have a friend or somebody coming up talking about, the reason why I like you, because boy, the sun rises and shines, sets with you. Run. Because that person is getting ready to put a burden on you that you cannot fulfill. And if you try to fulfill it, you will turn around and be in a crazy house yourself. Because you can't make a person happy. And that's what we learned in the Panther Party. That's what I carry today. That's what in my struggle, I have creative visions. The organization is that in the organization, we help people. We cannot heal people. We cannot cure people. But we can provide resources so they can make them choices themselves to be able to better their lives. Because if you're working with somebody trying to help them more than they're helping themselves, you're wasting your time. Because as we learned in the party, what happens is that you are their excuse for not succeeding. Because when they get mad, they don't get mad at themselves. Who do they get mad at?
That person.
Yeah, they get mad at you. Because we've been taught, even with Rodney King, when he got beat after death, and then he came out and didn't get no money, a little bit of money. But he came out talking about, can we all get along? You can't get along if you don't get along with you. But you can't get along if you're not having those real conversations. If you're not dealing with life and you're admitting that this is painful. How many of you ever had pain? How many have been hurt by somebody? Raise your hand if you've been hurt by somebody. You see, if you don't admit that you've been hurt and you don't identify your pain and be honest with yourself, you will never heal. You never will. Short story, real quick. How are we doing on time? We doing okay?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm gonna be quiet here in a minute because I want y'all to ask questions. And so we can have some real conversations. So y'all formulate your question because this is your chance to be able to ask any question you ever want to ask. And if you gotta come out your comfort zone to ask that question, I want you to today come out of your comfort zone. I want you to come out, of just being a student. Because you're gonna be a student all your life. When you stop being a student, that's when you start for your own life, your own growth. But as a child, I grew up, my father was nowhere around. I saw my father 3 times in his life. One, when I wanted to buy a car, I had the money, I bought the car, and I asked him, I said, I just need you to be able to go with me to this man and let him know it's okay for me to buy a car. My father looked at me, he said, ain't nothing I can do for you. So of course that was a blow to me. It hurt me, but I didn't deal with the pain at that time. The other time that I saw my father, I was at an apartment complex. I was across the street, and I saw my father drove up, and he walked in his house. And I said, wow, that's my dad. Never at no time did I not call him my dad. I went over there and knocked on the door. This woman came to the door, which is his wife. And I looked at her, and she said, I know who you are. And I said, cool. She opened the door, walked in. My brother and sister, she called them to come down the steps. They come down the steps. My father sat in the chair. He didn't say hi. He didn't acknowledge me at all. And then he looked at his children and he said, this is my daughter, Twyla, and this is my son, brother. And he looked at me, he said, this is Akeo. No label, blow 3. Third time I saw my father, I got a call from a friend of his. He said, your father's dying. At that time, my brother had been killed in a fraternity in Iowa State University. My brother couldn't swim, and he was pledging in a fraternity, a white fraternity, which I told him not to, not because they were white. I said, they're not gonna understand you. Understand the period of time I'm talking about. And he pledged anyway. They took all the pledgees out on the lake. They knew my brother could not swim, and they turned the boat over. Everybody made it back to shore but my brother, because he drowned it. That hurt. Now I'm internalizing my father. I'm internalizing the loss of my brother. But I'm really mad at my father. I am totally mad at my father. I'm pained, but I never faced that pain. I never dealt with that demon that was inside of me. So when they told me my father was dying, I went to Veterans Hospital and I sat by his side. And I was there until he died in my arms. Not because I loved him, because I had something to prove out of my hate. I wanted to prove I could be a son to him with a father he couldn't be to me. So I sat there with him. I watched him die. And I felt good with myself, but I never dealt with the pain. So my sister was still alive. She had a leg amputated and I wasn't there. She had 2 children and I wasn't there. Because of the way I felt about my father, I couldn't stand dealing with her. And I was taking out on her what I should have been taking out on my father and dealing with myself. You see, to bring change in society, you can't bring change in society if you don't change who you are. If you can't find out who you are and what you're about, how you gonna change anything else? If you try to, it's superficial. It ain't real. So you wanna go inside. So when my nephew died, he was killed, shot. I went to my sister and I sat in the house and I hugged my sister. I sat in the chair, but every time I looked at my baby sister, I saw my father's face. I left that house, and when I sat in my car, tears started rolling down because I felt so hypocritical. Because I never dealt with the pain that I had. And see, you gotta ask yourself, do I deal with my own pain? Do I even admit that's there? Or do you just internalize it and set it back in the corner and not deal with it? And I tell you, you can test that, because the person that caused you pain, you know, if you look at them sometime and you say, how you doing? I'm glad you're there. But then when they turn around, you turn around and say, damn it, I really don't want to talk to them. That means you ain't deal with your pain. If you turn around and look and you can't talk to that individual, no. So you see these blows, this pain, you got to learn to turn in to power. You got to be able to turn it into power. You got to be able to look at how do I turn my pain so that I can make it work. That way nobody can have you hating somebody that you ain't got no business hating. Then you start doing research and find out when you deal with race is something that was manufactured. Race isn't something that we grew up in. And you can prove it by when you follow your lineage back. See, as a black person, I can follow my lineage back. Because now I think we're still being called black, right? Only African American. What's the most? Somewhere in there, right? On the thing, or other, right? Okay, yeah, but it's there. You got all these things. But before, especially in the 60s, that we started calling ourselves black, we were Negroes. Yeah. And then people justify Negro because they say, that's a Spanish word for black. You called, boy, if you had walked up and called my grandmother black, she would knock you clean out. I'm a Negro. But then as I talked to, remember, teaching moments, as I talked to my grandmother, she remembers when she was called a nigger. She remembered when her mother was called a Negro. And she remembers when her parents told her that they didn't put no race on the birth certificate. You see, so when people start developing what you're supposed to call yourself, question yourself. And the thing is, understand the underlying movement. And that's why we're dealing with racism as hard as we are now, because we don't go to the root causes. Because when you go to the root, when you look at the root cause and you look at what's actually going on, they're not really talking about race. They're trying to get you not to deal with culture. Because now you got people that's walking around, and remember the time is basically coming out of the 60s and just a few years ago where people saying about, we don't see color. And we bought that. And you know how crazy that sounds? You walk in a room like this, and you talk about, I don't see color. I'm saying, when I walked in, y'all didn't know what color I was black. I look over here and say, sisters, my sisters, you back there, queen. I look at it talking about, I don't see color, what you need? Yeah, that's silly. You know, are you Asian? I walk into you and say, I don't see color. You look like me. You know, even Ray Charles knew what color he was dealing with. Because what they're telling me with you is that I'm not supposed to respect your culture, because if we look at each other not with color, but we look what we can learn from each other and our differences in culture, then that means our similarities have substance. That means I can look at you not only with your culture, but I can look at you as a human being. I can look at you and not deal with the color of your skin, but I can deal with the culture. So I can learn from you in the Asian culture as you will learn with me as I develop and discover my own culture. You know, I can learn and understand your roots, you know, because I understand I'm dealing with you in culture as a human being and what you are bringing to this world, your value. But if I look at you just as your color, then I'm going to devalue you. Because in history, you were not taught anything about African American, black people, Negro, Negresses, or whatever you call it, just like you weren't taught anything about women. You weren't taught anything about the Chinese and the railroad. So you devalue an individual, and then they can tell you these individuals are the reason why you're poor, why you don't have what you have. These individuals want to take your job. These individuals we arrested and everything else because they bring drugs in. You know that's what they blame the Chinese for, right? During the railroad, because they need to give white males jobs. So they said the Chinese were, you know, perpetuating the drug trade. But guess who was smoking the drugs at that time? Take a wild guess. Don't take my word for it. When I tell you, guess who was? Come on, y'all gotta help me.
White people?
Huh?
White people?
Not just white people, white women. Because at that time, what was the role of the white woman? Stay home barefoot and pregnant. You didn't get involved in politics. You didn't get involved in it. You couldn't even vote. Women couldn't even vote. Understand how this system is set up. Understand why we needed a Black Panther Party, why we needed SDS, why today we need you to stand up and believe in what you're doing to help make these changes on whatever level you decide to make, because this system was built to hoodwink and bamboozle you. This system was made so we would have problems with one another. So we have to make that change. I love Lenora. I love when she comes. Are we at 4 o'clock or 4:30?
4:15.
4:15? Okay, I'm gonna be quiet at this point, because we got a minute or two if this watch is correct. But you know, now, you know, I'm telling y'all, do what you need to do you. Then reach out to people next to you. Accept and respect them. That doesn't mean that you have to take them to dinner. That doesn't mean you gotta run to the movies or nothing, but you learn to respect and accept people for where they're at. I'm not gonna be mad at my brother because he got pink hair, or that he got more hair than I do. I'm not gonna be mad at him. I respect where he's at and his choices. I respect you for what you decide to do. I may not agree with you, but I respect that. You may not agree with anything I said. All I ask you is respect it. And then look it up and prove me wrong. But when you can't, admit you can't. Because this is your life. I'm getting close to retirement. How old do you think I look? Don't have me whoop you now. Go ahead. How old do I look? He said, what? All you know is whoop. How old do you think I look?
Pretty decent.
How old?
He's in his comfort zone. And I'm not mad at him. He didn't answer the question. Did he answer the question? No. How old do you think I look?
85.
How much?
85.
Who said 85? I agree with you. See, we gotta help people. But then, how old is that?
55.
55? Give him an 8. Make sure you get it. How old you think I look?
58.
He said 58?
No.
You want a job? Cause we're gonna find him. Okay. Now, seriously, I'm 71 years old. Yeah, 71. And I look good, I know. But anyway, but the key with that is simple, is that to the point that I'm at that point in my life to where now I wanna be a library. I wanna light your batons now and walk with you to help you not fall in the pitfalls I had to fall in. See, when you pass the baton, then you leave an individual. But if you light the baton, then you're there together. Cause then I can watch you deal and be able to make the moves that need to be made, and I can be there just to help make those moves. But as we get older, we have to know when to step back. We gotta know when to say, it's time for you. And if you don't take nothing else out of this room today, I'm saying it's time for you. It's time for you to step up. It's time for you to take leadership in the way that you feel comfortable. Let me be quiet.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I've realized throughout my life that I have been very bad about feeling myself. I don't think that it's easy for me to think about and feel myself at the same time. But when I do,
Do you mind taking your mask down a little bit?
sure, yeah,
We won't breathe on you.
don't worry about it. I've realized throughout my life that it's hard for me to get in touch with my feelings about myself, but when I do, I sort of know what is right, or I can at least feel. And sometimes I do switch modes and I start thinking about myself and I convince myself that it's not the right thing to do, or that I don't feel something that I actually do. And have you ever felt that, or how have you? I feel like that's something that's at the root of a lot of people not knowing what the right thing or good thing to do for themselves are. Does that resonate with you? What do you feel about that?
It does. That has happened to me. I've never thought about killing myself. I've never did that. You know, one is that I've never thought about hurting me, because I always was concerned about hurting other people. And I have hurt other people in my growth. But I never thought about hurting me. That doesn't mean I don't go in depression. That doesn't mean I don't have to question myself. But when I question me, you know, I try to do the logic thing. I try to find that focus point within me. You know, why am I questioning myself? Like one of the things that when my son was shot to death, and the man who shot my son to death, I took him into my home. And I took care of him 2 weeks while I prepared for my son's funeral. More people came against me than a little bit. And there's times that he laid on the floor and I sat on the couch looking at him, wondering if I could break him up in my basement. But I had to question, why did I do that? Then I had to question, was I scared? Was I punking out? Am I taking care of my baby? Am I defending my baby? Do I deserve to even be a father? And I started answering those questions because I looked at life. And then I had to ask the one question that I do in all my lectures and everything, is tell you, it's easy to die. There's not a person in here I wouldn't die for. If a shooter came through this door, I'll be the first one to go after the shooter. I could die for you. The question is, can you live for you? Can you live for you? It's hard to live for yourself and live for people. That's so hard. I don't mean be a doormat. I'm saying your life is worth more living than it is dead. Because all you have when you're dead is the day you were born, the day you died. and no one will ever deal with the hyphen in between. So your hyphen is what makes you. Not what people think, not even those depression moments, because in that hyphen, you're dealing, how do I come out of it? But let me offer something else to you. That if you ever reach that point, I'll give you my number. Call me. I'm very serious. You have my personal cell phone number. Call me. Because you're not going to resolve that overnight. You're not going to leave here and say, wow, I got here. No, it's going to happen. It's going to happen time after time. Because you have some baggage there somewhere that you need to unpack. And the only place you can unpack it is within you. That's the only way you're going to do it.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm also not big on the whole dying thing either. I believe it's my path to forge forward always, and I've never really had that inclination. But I think that there's something in between, which is living your life out in a trance state. Sort of just, it resonated with me when you were talking about meta, about social media and not connecting with people, because it's easy just to, I don't consider that living either, at least for myself. And I realized recently that it's hard for people to live in society truly. And it's hard to find people who want to do that or know that that's an option for them to actually live. And I think the beginning to that is just listening to myself, not listening to all the things that are told by others outside of me.
And like you said, you don't think about life.
Oh no, I don't think about like suicide or death, just to
Yeah,
them as
but
a substance,
one thing, know that this just dialogue today helped me.
Thank you.
If you weren't here, I never would have had that experience. We never would have connected on that level. But you did. And I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it, really.
So make sure you get my number.
I will.
And I mean call.
Absolutely.
All right.
I will.
Of course. Remind me who you are. All right. Yeah. But you do that.
Absolutely. I will.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I got a two-part question for you. What is, the first part is, what is your perspective on your dad now, right?
With perspective on what?
On your father?
My father now?
Yeah, and then the second part is, if you had the opportunity to be face-to-face and have a conversation with him, what would you say?
On the first part, my perspective now is that I'm learning and seeking about my father. And because I want to know what he went through. Because I didn't know what made him who he was. And I didn't care at that time, but now I care. I want to know what my father went through. And I've learned a lot about my father now because I reached out to people who I believe knew my father. And in doing that, I also found out that my father also was scared to tell me he was proud of me. And in my book that I wrote, I have a poem called, Marguerite. Because Marguerite was one of my father's best friends. And she worked at the Y. And that's how I was running a program at the Y. And she said, do you know who I am? And I said, Miss Marguerite. She said, no, your father and I were friends. And he said, one time there was a nightclub called Robert's Lounge. And I had just wrote a show. And we were performing that show in Robert's Lounge on a fundraiser. And my father was in there and I didn't even know. And he had told Marguerite at that time, she said that he told her, that's my son and I'm really proud of him. And she told me, your father was very proud of you. I took that, but on the other side of the coin, when I got home that night, I said, boy, I wish he had told me that. But I also had to deal with that. On the other side, what would I say to my father now and talk to him? John, to be honest, I don't even think about that. Because I don't go back. I'm not the type to say, if Yasmin had the power to tell me that I'm gonna give you 2 times that you can go back in your life, change it, or meet somebody, I wouldn't take neither one. Because what happened here made me here. If I go back and learn something different here, I may change here. And I don't want that to change, because now, in the last few years, I'm learning to really like me. I like who I am. Before, I always questioned that with me. Other people told me my value, but now I'm realizing my own value. So I like who I am. So I don't want to go back, at all.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Yeah,
Do you want to go first?
go ahead.
Okay, so,
Shoot.
in the past few weeks, there was a lot of racial incidents here at Drake,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if you're aware of them or not, but, it kind of feels like there's nothing being done, and it's very disappointing, and so I was just wondering, like, how do you incite change? Like, how do you inspire other people to actually be motivated enough to do something about it?
You still got a Black Student Union here?
Yeah, I think so.
A Black Culture Center or something?
There's
You used to have a
Coalition
house
for
around
Black
the corner,
Students, CBS,
Yeah.
Coalition
Yeah,
for Black Students,
CVS.
yeah.
Are you involved with them?
No.
Get involved with them. And tell them this is something we have to deal with. There's been racial, issues on Drake campus as long as I can remember. We marched back here, I can't remember what date, I spoke out here when, they first wrote a racial note or something and found out somebody else wrote the note. And then there was another time where other incidents were happening. Drake used to have a policy that they would tell all the students, don't go past 24th Street. Because once you got past 24th Street, it's not safe. Who lived past 24th Street? We did. So racism has been on this campus for a number of years. The problem with racism on campus is that students don't groom freshmen coming in to be able to take, so when they become seniors and leave, it leaves. Then you gotta start all over again. You gotta have systemic change. Plant something solid now. Get with CVS, get with other students who believe in the way you believe, no matter what color. And then start doing little things, a newsletter, highlighting these incidents, and what can we do? Start addressing. Get some of the folk and come outside of 24th Street. Come down to Creative Visions. Come down, start holding events in the community so you develop that support. We gotta hold this thing. April will give you her number. Get hold of April. We'll sit down and talk. We have no problem, as the late Congressman said, let's do some good trouble. That's all. Ain't nothing wrong with good trouble. People died so we could do good trouble. Okay. Any other questions? We're 4:14. Just got a couple.
Go ahead.
Right here.
So you mentioned just briefly like diversity and inclusion, but you never touched on equity. So I was like, my friends and I were talking, well actually no, my cousins and I were talking just about like what really is equity and what does equity look like. So for you, I mean, I know we only have a minute, so you can't really unpack your visions of equity, but like what does that look like for you? Like throughout your life, like how have you been able to?
Well, first of all, when you talk about inclusion, diversity and equity, that people are making money on that. Boatload of money. Companies are making money. And I think it's capitalism now, straight capital. When you talk about equity, you can't have equity on any level until you start looking at people as human beings. See, if I don't look at it and understand your value, my definition of equity and what you think equity is different. Because I'm doing it for the corporate, school, whatever, not doing it as a human being. Because when you talk about equity, you're talking about a level playing field. And in this country, we do not have a level playing field. That's real conversation.
So you think equity will never like be like in?
I think
I don't know.
I think your grandchildren will have an opportunity to experience it if we do what we're supposed to do now. I don't think I won't see it in my lifetime. But see, and just like with President Obama, when he became president, everybody said, I didn't think I would ever see a black president. I knew we would. We had no other place to go. No, I'm serious. I mean, deal with your history. We at that time, he was the only candidate that talked about hope. And we are starving so much for hope. That's what it takes. Donald Trump became president because he was able to feed those individuals that were starving for hope on a whole different level. And we were so frustrated, we didn't go vote. So people that wanted to go vote didn't go vote because they were frustrated. Young people didn't go vote because they were frustrated. So they voted, so they voted for Donald, and let me be clear, women didn't trust Hillary. See, we have issues to deal with. They didn't trust Hillary. So they stepped back and they didn't vote. So the people who Donald Trump gave hope to, they voted, and then we had 4 years of Donald Trump. And then everybody got mad. The people are still mad, but everybody got mad. I said, why are you mad? Because Donald Trump did this, and that. He told you he was going to do it. Donald Trump is one of the most truthful men I know. He tell you, I'm going to screw over y'all. And then when he screws over us, we said, why did he do that? Because he told you he was going to do it. He didn't have no respect for women. You knew it. He showed you he did. He didn't. I have no respect for authority. He has no respect for authority. He told you he doesn't. Our budget's all messed up and in the country. Why wouldn't it be? His is. So, we have to understand, I think it was Maya Angelou said, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. Don't change somebody that you don't have the power to change. So equity, we can strive for it if you come aboard to do what you can do. And every student in here, us, if we do what we're supposed to do, no matter what happens. One last question. Y'all okay?
I have a comment, if that's,
Yes.
and it's kind of in response to what a lot of you have been asking. And I think that it's part of what Akeo is saying about finding out who you are and what you can do personally to make change. What is your way to do it? Another thing is, we can point out what is bad and be very upset about it. That's part of the story. But the other part is also see what Akeo has brought to the table and what is around you that is being done for positive change. Because if you also identify things that are positive, that will help you determine what you want to do as well. So it's not just react to the negative, which makes you feel almost helpless. What can I do about that? But if there's someone who has said something that resonates, or even a class like this, which is in part created to create a nexus for Drake students like yourselves, to hear these different voices of people who have done things, that's something positive. Maybe how can we all communicate better, which is one of the things that Akeo was talking about. How can we hear each other and value each other? So don't just look at the negative that's happening, but also enhance the positive that you find in your lives. So that's.
And be ready for it. One of the, and I'm looking at April, so I gotta close, get ready to shut down. April is my campaign manager and works for me at Creative Vision. And she's an awesome individual that also keeps me on track, keeps my, calm and stuff, and keeps me moving. John works for me at Creative Vision. He does a violence interruption program. He's also an author. If you look for his books, his books are Conversations with Your Child, 8 Conversations with a Child. That's the name of it.
Hey, conversation with your son.
Yeah, and there's like about 8 books, 6 or 8 books. Look at his books, buy his books. That type of thing. Cortez is part of my conscience. And he's with y'all. Some of y'all microwave babies. He's a microwave baby. He wants everything to happen right now. Very impatient, and we're working on that. he also interrupts. So, but, you know, the key is, you know, I'm saying to y'all, you know, have those real conversations with yourselves. And sometimes it's not. Real short story is I pack up, you know, one of the parades I was in, I have birds, I have parrots, and I always take a parrot. And I put one of my parrots on this little boy's arm one time. And I looked at the dad, and I said, "You got a camera?" And the dad said, "Yeah," you know. And I, you know, his demeanor showed me I was gonna have a problem. But either, yeah. And the little boy looked up and said, "Dad, he's not like the other niggers." And I'm looking at the little boy. And the thing is, not an anger bone came in my body. I looked at the dad and I said, "You need to take out your camera. Take a picture of your son with the bird." I said, "Then learn from your son. Because you're teaching him one thing, but at some point he's seeing another. Quit trying to put your beliefs into him." And Dad looked at me, and he looked like he wanted to hit me. He looked at, but the son kept looking at him straight up, because his son's position was, "I like him." And the son asked me what my name was, and I said, "My name is Brother Akale." And he looked at me and said, "I'm gonna call you Brother Akale." So his son will never forget that. But if you don't, remember I said earlier, pick your moment and always make it a teachable moment. I love y'all.